The world is changing faster than ever before, and if you blink, you might just miss the revolution happening right in front of your eyes. A few years ago, electric vehicles were nothing more than a futuristic dream, a concept reserved for sci-fi movies and billionaire experiments. But now, they are everywhere. From the quiet streets of suburban neighborhoods to the high-speed highways of major cities, EVs are taking over. But here's the real question. Is this revolution truly as groundbreaking as it seems? Or are we being fed a carefully crafted illusion? Let's peel back the layers and uncover the truth. No one is telling you about the EV boom of 2025. The battle between legacy automakers and EV giants. For over a century, gasoline-powered cars dominated the roads. Names like Ford, Toyota, and General Motors built empires on roaring engines and massive fuel consumption. These automakers controlled the market, the technology, and even the governments that regulated them. But then came the disruptors. Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, new names that emerged from the shadows and challenged the status quo. They didn't just build electric cars. They built a movement that sent shockwaves through the entire industry. Traditional car manufacturers were left scrambling. Suddenly, their billion-dollar factories were outdated, their decades-old technologies were useless, and their gas-guzzling engines were now relics of the past. Ford and GM were forced to pivot. Volkswagen and Mercedes had to rethink everything. Even Toyota, once the king of hybrid technology, had to face the harsh reality, adapt or die. By 2025, the war between the old guard and the new EV pioneers is at its peak. Tesla's latest models boast insane acceleration and self-driving capabilities that seem ripped from a sci-fi movie. Rivian's trucks are redefining off-road adventures, while Lucid is pushing the boundaries of luxury electric sedans. But can the legacy automakers fight back? Or is this the beginning of their downfall? Advancements in EV technology, the promises and the reality. One of the biggest arguments in favor of EVs is their cutting-edge technology. And no one can deny that the tech is evolving at an almost terrifying speed. Battery breakthroughs. In just a few years, lithium-ion batteries have become smaller, lighter, and more powerful. Solid-state batteries, once a fantasy, are now becoming a reality, promising even greater efficiency and safety. Ultra-fast charging. Gone are the days of waiting hours to charge your car. New EV models can now charge from 10% to 80% in under 15 minutes, rivaling the time it takes to fill a gas tank. AI-driven driving experience. Self-learning driving systems can now anticipate road conditions, adjust to your driving habits, and even predict mechanical failures before they happen. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch. For every promise of efficiency and speed, there's a hidden downside. Batteries might be improving, but their lifespan is still a major issue. Ultra-fast charging reduces wait times, but it also degrades the battery over time, making replacements more frequent and more expensive. And AI-driven systems? They raise questions about data privacy, control, and what happens when software errors put lives at risk. The world is being promised a future where EVs are perfect. But is that really the case? The infrastructure, nightmare. The problem. No one wants to talk about. Here's a hard truth. EVs are only as good as the infrastructure that supports them. And right now, that infrastructure is far from ready. Picture this. You buy a brand new electric vehicle. It's sleek, fast, and silent. But when you hit the road for a long trip, you realize something terrifying. Charging stations are either full, broken, or non-existent. This is the harsh reality in 2025. Charging stations are expanding, but nowhere near fast enough. Power grids in many countries are not ready to handle millions of EVs charging at the same time. Rural areas are still completely dependent on gas stations, leaving EV owners stranded without reliable options. And then there's the cost. Building a nationwide EV charging network is not cheap. Governments are struggling to fund these projects, and private companies are hesitant to invest in infrastructure that might take decades to become profitable. So what happens if the grid collapses? What happens when everyone needs to charge their EV at the same time? This problem isn't just theoretical, it's already happening. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, and London are experiencing EV congestion at charging stations. Drivers are waiting in line for hours just to power up their cars. Is this really the future we were promised? The hidden costs of owning an EV. Many people assume that once they buy an EV, they're saving money. No more gas expenses, no more oil changes, just a clean, quiet, cost-effective ride. But that's only half the story. Battery replacements are expensive. A new EV battery can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, and most need to be replaced after 8 to 10 years. Insurance premiums are higher. Because of the expensive components and the need for specialized repairs, EV insurance can cost significantly more than traditional car insurance. Repairs are more complicated. Unlike gasoline cars, where a local mechanic can handle most problems, EVs require specialized technicians who are still rare and costly. And let's not forget depreciation. Electric vehicles are evolving so fast that last year's model becomes outdated in the blink of an eye. Resale values drop quickly, and many early EV adopters are already facing the harsh reality that their once futuristic cars are losing value at an alarming rate. So, before you rush to buy an EV thinking it will save you thousands, ask yourself, are you really prepared for the long-term costs? Conclusion. Is the EV revolution a dream or a delusion? By now, one thing should be clear. The electric vehicle revolution is not as simple as it seems. Yes, EVs are the future. Yes, they bring incredible advancements in technology, sustainability, and driving experience. But they also come with a long list of challenges that no one is talking about. The battle between EV giants and legacy automakers is just heating up. The technology is advancing, but the infrastructure is still catching up. The promise of a clean green future is exciting, but the hidden costs and complications can't be ignored. So, what does this mean for you? If you're considering buying an EV in 2025, do your research. Don't just believe the hype. Look beyond the marketing campaigns and ask the tough questions. Because the truth is, the EV revolution is here, but it's far from perfect. And the real question is, are you ready for it? The electric vehicle revolution is in full swing. Governments are pushing for a gasoline-free future, automakers are racing to release new models, and tech companies are promising smarter, faster, and more efficient EVs. But beneath all the excitement, there's a side of the EV industry that no one wants to talk about. A side that reveals hidden costs, global consequences, and uncomfortable truths about what it really takes to power the so-called clean energy movement. If Chapter 1 opened your eyes to the reality of EVs, Chapter 2 will shake your belief in the revolution itself. Because once you see the dark side of EV adoption, you might never look at an electric car the same way again. The lithium lie. The dirty secret behind clean EVs. Electric vehicles are often marketed as the cleaner, greener alternative to gasoline-powered cars. No emissions, no pollution, no guilt. But here's the inconvenient truth. EVs aren't as clean as they seem. At the heart of every electric vehicle is a massive lithium-ion battery. And where does lithium come from? Mines? Mining lithium requires millions of gallons of water, leading to droughts and environmental destruction in regions like South America, Australia, and China. The process releases toxic chemicals into the environment, poisoning local communities and ecosystems. Cobalt, another essential element in EV batteries, is often mined under horrifying conditions, with reports of child labor in countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, are EVs really better for the planet, or are they simply shifting the pollution from the streets to the mines? Governments and automakers want you to believe that EVs are a perfect solution to climate change. But in reality, we're trading one form of destruction for another. And if that wasn't bad enough, wait until you hear about the battery disposal crisis. The EV battery crisis, a ticking time bomb. Everyone loves to talk about how EVs don't need oil changes, engine repairs, or gas stations. But no one talks about what happens when an EV battery dies. Unlike traditional car parts, lithium-ion batteries are extremely difficult to recycle. Most old EV batteries end up in landfills, where they leak toxic chemicals into the soil and water. The few recycling centers that do exist can only recover a small percentage of battery materials, making it nearly impossible to reuse them efficiently. As EV adoption grows, experts predict a massive waste crisis, with millions of dead batteries piling up, creating a new kind of environmental disaster. Governments are already struggling to manage traditional electronic waste. Are we really ready for a world drowning in expired EV batteries? The problem isn't just about waste, it's about what happens when the materials run out. The supply chain war. Who really controls the future of EVs? There's another reason why electric cars aren't as freeing as they seem. They're controlled by a handful of powerful nations. China dominates the lithium and cobalt supply chain, controlling over 70% of global battery production. The US and Europe rely heavily on foreign countries to supply EV materials, making them vulnerable to trade wars, sanctions, and economic manipulation. As demand for EVs skyrockets, countries are fighting over resources, leading to political instability, price hikes, and even the risk of future conflicts. Think about it. Oil wars shaped the 20th century. Will lithium wars shape the 21st? And even if we solve the supply chain crisis, there's another major issue that no one is talking about: the power grid. The power grid meltdown. Can the world handle a full EV transition? EVs might not need gas, but they still need electricity. And that's where the real problem starts. Most countries' power grids were built decades ago, long before anyone imagined a world where millions of cars would need to charge every day. And yet, governments are pushing for mass EV adoption without upgrading the infrastructure. In California, rolling blackouts are already a common issue, and energy demand is expected to surge by over 25% due to EV charging. In Europe, aging power grids are struggling to keep up with demand, leading to concerns about future electricity shortages. In developing nations, where millions of people still lack reliable electricity, the idea of widespread EV adoption is a fantasy. Here's the nightmare scenario. What happens when everyone needs to charge their car at the same time? The answer? Massive blackouts, soaring electricity prices, and a power grid that simply can't keep up. If EV adoption continues at its current pace, the energy crisis of the future won't be about oil, it will be about electricity. And speaking of crisis, let's talk about what happens when the government decides to take control of your EV. The government kill switch. Who really owns your EV? In the world of gasoline cars, if you own a vehicle, you control it. You decide where to drive, how fast to go, and when to refuel. But EVs? They operate under a completely different set of rules. Modern electric cars are fully connected to the internet, with software updates that can change the way they function overnight. And that's where things get dangerous. In China, the government already has the ability to remotely disable EVs if they want to. In the US, there are discussions about integrating kill switches into future vehicles, allowing authorities to shut down your car at any time. In an emergency or political crisis, what's stopping a government from restricting EV use altogether? If you think this sounds like a conspiracy theory, think again. Tesla, Rivian, and other EV manufacturers already have remote access to every car they sell. A single software update can control your car's speed, battery range, or even lock you out entirely. So, do you really own your EV? Or is it just another device controlled by corporations and governments? The final truth. Is the EV revolution a trap? By now, you've seen both sides of the EV revolution. The promises, the advancements, the excitement, and the terrifying hidden costs that no one is talking about. EVs might be the future, but they come with serious consequences that we are not prepared for. A fragile supply chain controlled by a few powerful nations. A battery crisis that could lead to an environmental disaster. A power grid that isn't ready for mass adoption. The looming threat of government and corporate control over personal vehicles. The question isn't whether EVs are good or bad. The question is, are we rushing into this revolution without thinking about the consequences? Because once the world fully transitions to EVs, there's no turning back. And when that happens, will we truly be free? Or will we have just traded one problem for another, one that we can't escape? This is the truth about electric vehicles in 2025. And now, you have to decide what to believe.